Way back in my mid-20s, I was going through a divorce. I had pretty much lost everything except my futon and a TV. I had no bed, so I slept downstairs on the futon in a pretty much empty 2-story house. Living alone, I was very thorough in locking up at night, checked all the windows and made sure the doors were locked. Well, one night, I was sleeping on my futon. I awoke to what I thought was footsteps on my stairs. That's when I woke up a little bit more and focused on the sound. It was someone creeping down my stairs. At that moment, I went to hop up and grab my baseball bat, but right then I felt that I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. I was fully awake, but I couldn't move. I could hear someone reach the bottom of my stairs and start walking towards the living room where I was laying. The way I was laying, I couldn't see the doorway, but I could hear them step inside the room and then stop. By now, I'm panicking. I'm trying to move or yell or do anything to defend myself. Then I heard the footsteps leave the room and walk to the kitchen and towards the back door. Then silence. Slowly, I'm able to fully start to move. I sat up, heart racing, listening intently. Nothing. So I must have been dreaming. I was still shook from this, thinking someone was in my house, so I decided to get up and get a drink. When I reached the kitchen, I froze. The back door was wide open. I grabbed a knife and closed the back door and once again locked it. I searched the rest of the house, but I didn't find anyone. Needless to say, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I bought deadbolts the next day. Nothing like that has happened since. It was Atlanta, 2005-ish. My best friend was in town, and she was able to get us a nice hotel room near bars with her points. We got back to the hotel late, but before midnight, and we were intoxicated but not blackout drunk. Got ready for bed and in our jammies, and fell right to sleep in the queen-size bed. She had accidentally put down just one occupant on the reservation, and we didn't bother to update it upon check-in. Several hours later, I woke up, bleary-eyed, and saw a tall man just staring at us, and in my stupor calmly asked, "What are you doing here?" My friend then woke up at the sound of my voice and asked what was going on. He seemed frozen, like a deer in headlights. He told us he was hotel security and there had been a report of a disturbance, and he was here to ask us to quiet down. Confused, we told him we had been asleep for hours, and he told us okay and to have a good night. He left out the door and we went right back to sleep. The next morning, we went down to talk to management because, as we discussed what had happened last night, we realized it seemed very strange. Management talked to my friend and then called someone more senior to talk to her. I was on the phone watching from across the room. As they brought out the second person and they spoke with her, she became sheet white. They had no on-site security team, and no one had called in any disturbances the night before. They immediately moved us to a different room and upgraded the rest of our stay. To this day, I wonder if that room was targeted because it was only supposed to have one woman in there at the time, and when the person saw the two of us, they panicked and decided not to move forward. I also wonder what would have happened if our reaction was not tempered by alcohol and a dreaming state. If we had screamed, would that have triggered something more sinister? This happened when I was around 6 or 7. My Aunt Lay was the youngest of my mom's sisters and had recently gotten married. Lay's new husband had to go on a trip for work, and the same night he left, my parents went out for dinner. Lay babysitting and me keeping her company worked out for the both of us. I remember Lay was taking a shower upstairs while I watched some movie in the living room. She was a super chill aunt and let me stay up and eat whatever the hell I wanted. All of a sudden, I heard somebody trying to open the back door. It was located in the kitchen, and for some reason, my stupid kid brain assumed it was my parents. I went into the kitchen and flicked on the lights, and who I saw on the other side of the glass door startled me. It wasn't my mom or dad, but a man I had never seen before in my life. I was about to turn around and run away, but the man spoke calmly and told me he was a friend of my aunt's and not to be afraid. He said he had a gift to give her since he couldn't make it to the wedding and asked me to open the door. I believed him because a week prior, my uncle's friend dropped by with a gift because he too couldn't make it to the wedding. I walked towards the door, and I remember the man's smile widened in a way that still gives me the creeps. But before I could turn the doorknob, my aunt screamed at the top of her lungs, scaring me half to death. I ran towards her crying because I knew I was in trouble. My aunt yelled, "Mike, what the hell are you doing here, you psycho?" In which he replied, "You're dead, bitch. You're fucking dead." I then heard glass break, which made me cry and scream as my aunt grabbed me and we fled to the neighbor's house. 911 was called, and Mike, who was found nearby, was arrested. I found out years later that Mike was an abusive man my aunt had dated 5 years prior to getting married. To this day, she doesn't know how he found her or how he knew she had gotten married. I guess that set him off, and I'm glad nobody was hurt. I used to live in a trailer park from my sophomore year in college. It was a really nice city, super liberal and hippy-dippy. My 2 roommates were off in class, but I took the day off school as our dishwasher took a crap, and I had to wait for the repairman to show up. It was one of those ridiculous any time between 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. kind of things. I didn't want to wait a day longer, as my roommates sucked at hand-washing dishes, and I would have to wash them all again as I cooked most of my meals at home, and we had a limited kitchen set. Anyways, I sleep in until about 10:45 a.m., and my alarm goes off. I probably dicked around for a few minutes, then got in the shower, not expecting the repairman to be around till noon. I was butt naked and had a head full of shampoo when I heard someone knock on the door. I start washing up as quick as I can when I hear more aggressive knocking. Dude is waiting like 5 seconds between each volley of knocks. Thinking he must have been knocking for a while and I didn't hear him in the shower, I was feeling bad for making him wait. As I'm drying off and quickly putting on some clothes, I hear a very loud boom come from the door. I kinda second-guessed myself and thought, did I really just hear that? And stopped for a second. Then I hear another loud boom, and I definitely could make out the noise of my door being forced in and opening. I thought about going to my room to retrieve any one of my 3 guns. Then I realized they were still all in their cases after my last range day with the locks on them. I was almost smiling at the irony of all my preparations for this scenario, and I got caught lacking the one day it all mattered, naked and afraid. I heard someone call out, "Hello?" and I decided to meet my maker in a t-shirt and a towel wrapped around my ding-dong. I figured if there was a fight coming, maybe they would second-guess getting my half-washed nuts rubbed all over them. I walk down the hallway and lean out into the kitchen, which has a vision of the front door. My door had been smashed in all right, and the wood frame was shredded. I caught the gaze of a scrawny man, about my size, 5'10", holding a sledgehammer standing just beside my ruined door. He honestly looked just as surprised as me, and he says, "I'm so sorry, I didn't think anyone was home," and bolts away. I'm like as confused as can be, just looking at my smashed-in door, half naked like an idiot. I finally throw on some pants and go outside to investigate, but it was far too late to catch the culprit. My door had 2 huge dents in it, but it held up. Just the frame had been beaten in and left 2 gashes going in, one where my doorknob was, and one where my deadbolt was. I had a suspicion that I was not a burglar. So I called my dad and asked him if the repairman he sent had just come by, and explained what had just happened as best I could. He said he would call me back. I get a ring from him a few minutes later while I'm seeing if I can salvage the door, and he sounds livid. The contractor they sent was mistakenly told the job was for an asbestos test, typically what has to be done before a trailer is taken to the dump. The guy must have assumed the home was vacant and let himself in after a courtesy knock, and got scared when I was home and ran away. The part that made my dad angry was that they tried to say we had to pay for the damages for some smooth-brain reasoning the greaseball manager came up with, and ended with a "see you in court" from my dad. He told me to photograph anything we could use as evidence, and he would drive over to help me fix my door, as he was only about an hour's drive away. Making a very long and boring story short after that, it all ended with the contracting company deciding to just cough up $200 instead of going to court, and the cherry on top was that they sent the man that beat in my door to give me the money and the most awkward and rehearsed apology. I was reminded of this story as I drove past their office today and saw their doors were shuttered and everything was gone, hopefully out of business, and no longer sledging doors in for surprise asbestos tests. This is my first time posting anything like this on here, so forgive me if this isn't the best explanation. This summer, I decided to pick up some graveyard shifts at my current full-time job, simply because it pays more, and I'm a university student drowning in student debt. About 2 weeks ago, on the rare occasion that I get to sleep during the time the sun is down, at 3:30 or 4 a.m., I was suddenly awoken by a loud sound. Me being half asleep, I honestly didn't know what the sound exactly was, so I just chalked it up to being one of my neighbors dropping something, because I live in an apartment with very thin walls, so I was just trying to go back to sleep. After about 10 minutes of laying there with my eyes closed, I hear the sound again, but this time I'm pretty much awake, so I recognize what the sound is immediately. Someone was knocking on my window. For context, I'm a single female living alone and in a basement suite, so my windows are basically level with the sidewalk. Anyways, obviously I'm freaked out. I don't know what the heck to do. I don't want to move and make any loud noises so they don't know I'm home, and I'm just frozen laying in this bed. Then I hear the knocking again. I instantly bolt up as my fight or flight response kicks in and run to the front door, which has my keys with my pepper spray on it. The keys clink together and make a noticeable sound, and the knocking starts to get more intense and loud. This is when I realize the window with the screen by my bed is almost all the way open because my cat likes to sit on the edge, and I forgot to close and lock it. I start to freak out, already having major anxiety. I start looking for my phone just in case I need to call the police. Me being clumsy and shaking from anxiety, I drop the phone on the ground, and whoever's at my window proceeds to what sounds like slide either his fingernails or a sharp object down the screen. I realize this person's intentions are either to come in or to scare me, so like an idiot and not thinking, I run to the window as fast as I can, slam it shut and lock it, while avoiding looking outside at whoever was there. The knocking stops, and I wait about 30 minutes without hearing any knocking. I lay back down and go right back to sleep. The next morning, I honestly couldn't believe that even happened to me. I start to think maybe it was a dream. So I go outside and investigate, and I see an empty beer bottle and a ripped up blanket. I text my only friend that knows where I live and ask them if they were messing with me. They say no, which I figured because they don't drive and live quite far away, and the buses around my house stop running well before 3 a.m. So I called my landlord and told him what happened, and he says to ignore it, and that this has happened before, which is creepy. Anyways, I obviously recognize now I should have done a lot of things differently and called the police right away. It hasn't happened since, Nonetheless, still super terrifying, but I can't afford to move again. So, creepy bro knocking on my window. Let's not meet again. So, just to clarify, I was 15 and home alone and lived on a Native American reservation at the time. Shit would happen all the time. Hearing things, walking at night, you would see shadows, etc. The kids would call them skinwalkers. Besides the point. This was during the day. My mom was at work and me, well, I dropped out of school due to a medical situation. So I had this huge window in my room. I'm talking wide. Took about a whole section of one wall. Just enough space to fit a vanity and my TV on both sides. I was chilling, smoking weed, walking around my room. Showered at one point, so I changed. All while a man was sitting on a wooden post directly across from my backyard watching me. I didn't have curtains. When we first moved in, they had ugly blinds hanging up. I tore them down and put up a really cool blanket, and during the day I would tie them up so light would come in. Arizona is a beautiful state, so to see desert every morning along with the sunrise is amazing. Hours pass and my mom comes home and we go to Taco Bell. I vividly remember being on Twitter in my room eating cheesedillas when all of a sudden the light in the hallway went off. So I was like, okay, it's my mom. But then my door opened slightly and my mind was racing. At that point, it's about 9:30 at night. My lights are off in my room. Only light is from my phone. I start calling my cat's name. We had 3, and that's when I see him. A tall man, red baseball hat and jeans. I was going through a hard time, and I was in a depression pit. I started screaming and throwing hangers and empty soda cans, screaming for my mom, who was home and her room was next to mine. She comes out, flips my light on, and there is no one there. I'm telling her to call the police. There was a man in my room. So my mom gets her switchblade from her room and walks me through every room upstairs until we look down into the living room from our balcony and we see a blanket from our guest room on the floor. Then my mom looks at me and tells me to stay back. Being that it was my mom, I held her hand and we end up downstairs in the office room where the window's wide open. To cut to the end, the man was arrested breaking into another home, and when asked about me, he was ready to kidnap me, and he had been watching me. The neighbors called 911 because they saw him trying to get into our gated backyard. My mom saved my life, and I don't know what would have happened if she hadn't have been there. This happened a few hours ago, and I'm still shaking as I write this. So I'm home alone. My mom's out visiting family and picking up some stuff. I'm chilling playing Animal Crossing with my dog Ty laying on my bed keeping me company. Ty suddenly bolts up, hackles raised and growling, which is rare for him to do. He's only done it once before. I heard someone downstairs shout out, "Hello?" and me being stupid shouted back. I went downstairs to see 2 guys outside looking in through the window. So I went and opened up the door to see what they want, since I was expecting a parcel. They immediately start with, "Hi, we have a warrant for the electricity meter," and I immediately felt off. You don't get a warrant to check an electrical meter. So I did the only thing I could think of. I told them I was underage and home alone, with Ty watching them through the window. I told them I'd call my mom, shut the door and tried to lock it, but I couldn't. The key wouldn't turn. So I called my mom. I explained what was going on and I barricaded the door so no one could move the handle down. After a few minutes, I managed to turn the key and lock the door. I went upstairs to check the cameras and lo and behold, it showed 3 men standing outside the door, occasionally looking at the cameras and trying to stay hidden. At one point, you can see 2 of them enter the house. They run out and quietly shut the door. This was the same time Ty went running downstairs. As I kept watching the playback, I saw the van door open and shut. So I think there were 4 people. I have no idea who these men were or how they unlocked the door, and I'm never going to open the door without a weapon nearby. Update. 3 hours later, Mom has come back and watched the footage. They brought a dog bar, the one stray catchers use with the long bar and a snare bit on one end. She suspects they picked the lock on the front door so I couldn't lock it, so they couldn't get in. She found the number on the van to call, so she's called them. I don't really know what's going to happen now. Update 2. So it's the next day now. Mom called the company number on the van and ripped them a new one. She thinks they were here to install a pay-as-you-go meter for the electricity, but nothing's been touched or moved. Ty stayed in my room with me last night and helped me get some sleep. They haven't come back yet, but I will be carrying my knife on me whenever I take Ty out for a walk, and I'll be checking the cameras regularly when I'm home alone.